Well, good evening. This is Sue Hutchins with Iowa Prison Perspectives. And tonight we have a unique interview. I have on my phone a young man who is currently incarcerated in Clarinda, Iowa, at the correctional facility there, whose name is Ced. And he and Maya, who is also here on Zoom, have done a documentary that is called Just Us. And so before I have Maya talk to you about the documentary, I want to have have a chance to talk to you about what his life is like in prison and what his perspective of the prison system in Iowa is. So Ced, if you want to talk, that would be great.
Yes. Hello, my name is Cedric B. Vias, and I've been incarcerated since March 15, 1996. And in March of 1996, I was charged with first-degree felony murder. In July 15, 1996, I was convicted, and I've been in prison ever since.
And you've been housed at several different prisons. Am I correct about that?
Yes, I started off in Woodbury, Sioux City, Iowa. Then I went to Oakdale, IMCC in Oakdale, Iowa, or I think it's called Coralville now.
Yes.
And from there, I went to Anamosa, and I was in Anamosa State Penitentiary for about 4.5 years. And then I requested to get moved to Iowa State Penitentiary in Fort Madison, where I stayed for a little over 21 years. And then I've been in Clarinda since January 19th of 2023.
Okay. And during your time in prison, you've written a couple of papers that I know of, and you've also written a couple. Am I correct that you have a book published, at least one book published already?
Yes, I have an urban fiction book, which I don't really put out there because it's urban fiction, so it's
Okay.
a crime drama, and
Okay.
it's not a nonfiction or based on incarceration, anything like that. So. But my other papers are nonfiction, and a lot of times they were dealt with. A lot of times they were essays for like newspapers or essay contests, and they were dealing with mass incarceration or reentry or certain topics like that.
Okay. Can you give us a little bit of information about your perspective of the prison system, what you think works and what you think doesn't work? And I particularly am interested in talking to you and hearing your opinion about the disparity of how African American and people of color are treated while incarcerated, if you're willing to talk about that.
All right. Yes, I am. For me, what does not work, I'll start with that, is warehousing individuals and not taking advantage of us being incapacitated or removed from society to make individuals better. I believe in restorative justice over retributive justice. And restorative justice, for those who may not have heard of it, it recognizes the harm that was caused by the perpetrator, the harm on the victim, the harm on perpetrated against the community, society, your own family, and yourself, and it seeks to reconcile that harm. Of course, there are many times where you can't erase the harm, but it addresses the harm, and usually that looks like a person owning up to the wrong that they've done, and talking about the harm to the victims, and the victims expressing, what the harm did to them, and then moving towards rehabilitation and restoration, of the relationship. So I believe strongly in that. That's what indigenous people in America did. That's what indigenous people in Africa did. I don't know if they still do that, but historically, that is the way human beings solve their issues when it related to harm. And my problem with incarceration is that it's become, at least in America, a for-profit industry. And you have people who profit off incarceration who uh, lobby these politicians to create harsher sentences, to create tougher conditions inside prison so that they can make more money off us. And studies have shown that being so-called tough on crime is actually being tough on criminals to alienate us from our families actually creates more crime and increases recidivism instead of reducing it. And that in turn makes more money for people who profit off prison beds being full. So the number one problem that I would say is that we have somewhat of a for-profit prison industry, and there are too many people who profit off incarceration who get to call the shots or help craft policies or create policies that don't work for society as a whole. And another thing that I see all of the time is a focus on warehousing. You know, we don't address why a person committed their crime. You know, what led them to commit the behavior or the act that they did, and then try to fix it, and then try to solve that problem and try to make that person better. And if you look at a lot of Western European models in places like the Netherlands or Norway, who have low crime rates and low recidivism rates, that's exactly what they do. So we have models out there that work, and we have evidence based on other countries of what works. And some states, such as I think North Dakota, implemented some of those policies, and they've had success.
Yes, and Missouri did some of that. Missouri did some of that. Well, they did some of that too. They have a program that just started last year that people had to apply for it, and you had to be free of any write-ups for I think 10 years, but I could be wrong about that. Anyway, they started a program that's been really, really successful where the guys kind of run their own floor, and it's really working well. They're very proud of it. Could you, if you don't mind saying, would you let the audience know how much it has cost to incarcerate you up to this date?
Since most of my incarceration has been in maximum security in ISP, the last estimate that I saw was $59,000 a year in ISP, and the last one that I saw for medium institutions, such as like Clarinda, was about $39,000 or somewhere around that range. So for the majority of my incarceration, let's say 26 years of it, it's cost about $60,000 a year to incarcerate me. And before I go on, I want the viewers to understand that I was sent to prison. I was sent to prison because of the crime. I remain in prison because I did not accept a plea bargain. So I essentially have a life sentence because I didn't understand a plea offer that was given to me, that was offered to me during my trial for 50 years. I thought that it would be 50 years, 85% mandatory attached, because that law had just passed about a week before I went to trial. And me not understanding the law and it being a new law, I thought that it would affect me, not knowing that had I accepted the plea, I would have been out at least on parole over 10 years ago. And I would have discharged maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So I would be done with that sentence had I said yes. And that was at a time when I was 19 years old, and the state of Iowa had no idea who I would become. You know, they didn't know whether or not I would come to prison and become a gang member, a drug addict. You know, they didn't know anything about me except that I had been accused of committing that crime at the time. That's all they knew about me. And they were willing to give me a chance to be free again. But because I chose to go to trial, you know, they call it the trial penalty in a lot of legal circles. I was sentenced to life without parole. So that's the reason I'm doing life without parole. Is not because of the crime. It is because I did not accept the plea. And for some people, they may say, well, plea bargains mean that you accept responsibility, but that's not the case. A lot of people who plead guilty, they plead guilty because they don't want the harshest sentence. Mm-hmm. You know, they'll still tell you they didn't do the crime or they didn't commit it, but they didn't want to sit before a jury. They didn't trust the system, or they got a favorable deal that they accepted it. It has nothing to do with how remorseful you or anything like that.
And that's really, I agree with you that is important for people to know, very important for people to know. And I also want the audience to know that we have a bill now in Iowa that is going to, it's House File 126, and it is a bill written to raise the age of juveniles, the age of accountability of juveniles from 18 to 20, meaning that anybody under the age of 20, when they committed their crime, will be eligible for parole, eligible for a number, and then eligible to see the parole board. That doesn't mean that people will just automatically get out, but it does mean that people will have, people like in your situation, will have the opportunity to have a number of years so that you will be eligible for the possibility of parole and a second chance. And that includes all of the Class A felonies except for first-degree murder. So it includes felony murder, but not first-degree murder, and accomplice and kidnapping that's attached with other charges. So I think that's important for people to know. And I think that'll be, that's a good addition to the procedures of Iowa if that bill passes. It affects it's about 85 plus men and women in the state of Iowa that would then be eligible for a second chance. Yeah.
And I want to add to that you know, this law is kind of piggybacking off the juvenile law, like you said in the beginning.
Right.
And those who have been paroled already overwhelmingly have been successful. So the parole board is very good at weeding out who should receive a parole and who shouldn't, or who have earned the right to be free again and who shouldn't. I know that the stats have changed since I've last seen them. But for a while, the recidivism rate was at 0 for those who had life sentences, who as juveniles who were released on parole. So they've shown that, you know, they were no longer a danger to society. And they're out here in university. Some of them have college degrees. They're hardworking. They have good jobs. A lot of them are associated with nonprofits. They do work with at-risk youth. So you name it. A lot of these guys are out here, you know, really making a positive impact on society. Well, not just guys, men and women, right, who are out, you know, leaving a positive impact on society.
Right. And none of them have violated or committed a violent crime. The recidivism it's less than 1%, and it had nothing to do with committing another crime. It had to do with with other things, not making appointments and that sort of parole violations. But it doesn't have anything to do with committing another crime. So I agree with you that that's really important for people to know. And it's around 30, somewhere around 30 juvenile lifers in Iowa who have been released. So yes, that's important. And nationwide, the lifers who have been given a second chance, recidivism rate for a violent crime is right at 1%. It's less than 1.5%. So it's just above 1%. So even, I mean, people who have been in your situation and get a second chance do not mess it up. They just don't mess it up. They just don't. They will do anything to not mess it up. So it's important. I think that's really important. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you know what people need to realize too is that you're on parole for the rest of your life.
Right.
So they watch you, they check in on you, they make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do, you know, and all of these things. So I don't want people to think that this is a so-called get out of jail free card, or it's like a pardon, you know, like you're absolved. No, you still have the conviction. You know, you're just able to serve your sentence out in society as long as you follow the rules that are set out by the Iowa Department of Corrections or the parole board.
Correct. Okay, and now if we could move on to the documentary that you and Maya did before I have her talk about it. Is there anything you want to say? I haven't even told people the title of it yet or what it's about. So was there anything that you'd like to say before I turn it over to Maya?
No, I can just answer some of the questions that she'll be answering. But
okay, so you're more than happy to just let her take the reins of the documentary. And also she'll be talking about the new book that you're doing and that you're going to be releasing sometime in the near future. So I want to thank you very much for being willing to come on and being willing to share your insights and your story. Much appreciated. And so now, yes. And so now I'm going to ask Maya some questions. I'm going to let her talk. Actually, I'm not going to ask her questions. I'm going to let her talk about Just Us and see what she can tell us about that particular documentary. So Maya, it's all yours.
Okay, well, you really didn't have to give me the reins, Ced, because Just Us is a documentary that Ced conceived of, and he told me about his ideas for this documentary, and I joined him in the role of co-producer and director, but it really remained Ced's idea baby, and Ced was in a lot of the creative control for it, whereas I had more of a role of like conduit. I was kind of like actualizing on the ground and that producing role where I make sure that we have the right people and the right jobs to make it happen. I think that Ced, you should actually be the one to kind of summarize for people what it's about, if you're okay with that.
Yeah. Yes. Just Us, JUST, capital US, is all one word, and you can find it free on Tubi. Was a film originally set out to how current and former prisoners were contributing to rehabilitation and trying to be an advocate for
1 minute remaining.
Trying to advocate for laws that are being changed and to speak to at-risk youth. The phone is going to hang up in a little bit, so I'll need to call back, or maybe I can continue speaking about Just Us once I call back.
Okay. And in the meantime, Maya can talk about it because I don't want to leave her out of this. I mean, I want her to have a part in this also. So if you want to give us like maybe 10 minutes and then call back, that would be awesome.
I'm going to have to lock in at about 20 after. So if I'm going to call back, I have to do it now.
Oh, okay. Then call back. Yeah, then call back. Okay. Talk to you in a minute. Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Okay. So, well, hello, Maya, and welcome.
Hi.
Let me introduce you to people. Maya is a person who is an advocate for fairness in prison reform and is also a therapist, and she works with children and at-risk youth. I will let you talk about how you met Ced and how you got involved in doing this documentary, Just Us.
Okay, yeah. I met Ced on writeaprisoner.com. At that point, I was in college and I was part of like an advocacy group around mass incarceration, bringing awareness to some of the harms caused by mass incarceration and the disparities. And so Ced and I started talking, and mostly, at first about politics and beliefs, but then we really became friends, talking about our social lives, our relationships, our, deepest wishes and dreams and things like that. And we became really close friends. And so when we started working together on the documentary, like I said, it was his idea and I kind of joined him on it. We really enjoyed working together. We were really good partners on the project. And I hear he's joining us back, which is great.
Clarinda Correctional Facility in Clarinda, Iowa. You
It's
must
such a
listen to the
familiar
entire message
experience.
I
before
know.
entering select. To
I
accept
know.
this call, press 5. To
I
refuse
know.
this call, hang up now. To block this call and all future calls, press 9. You may
You
enter a
may enter
selection now.
selection now. Yep.
You may begin.
Hey, Ced. Oh.
Say hi, Ced. Hi,
Hey,
Ced.
Ced.
Hey. Hey.
I was
My
just talking a little bit about how we met, how we became close friends, and what it was like working together on the film. And yeah, where do you want me to go next to?
talk a little bit about the actual production of the film, how you gathered people together, and some of
Yeah.
the places that you've been, and how decisions were made about who was going to be in it and who wasn't going to be in it, that sort of thing, how you laid it
Okay.
out. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question because to our knowledge, it's the only full-length documentary film that's created by a prisoner. And so there were a lot of really unique obstacles we had to figure out. And it was also during the pandemic that we were really in the thick of it. So there was also just those typical obstacles that other filmmakers were having at that time too. But what was really amazing is that because it's such a unique project and such a needed project, people really were so willing to be a part of it and to help out. And so through every stage of the production, we had so many people volunteering their time and helping out in different roles of different sizes. When it started off, like I said, I was still in college and I had some friends who were in different like production type of interests or early in their careers, and so they would help get us some early footage and go on film trips, and had other friends who would help try to figure out grants or try to figure out funding sources or other connections in the film industry since we were kind of coming from ground zero. And um, and that early pre-production phase helped us get a grant from the Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs, which allowed us to kind of level up and get a professional editor involved and get a team together with Iowa-based artists mostly that was able to make a really professional film. But even at that stage where there was a core team working, we still had all these unique challenges where for Ced to be able to produce and direct, he would need to hear about what was going on through me through the phone on the ground with the filming, and to share his ideas, and instructions for interviews via email. And then we would also need help with transcribing footage because we'd have all this footage that for him to be able to know what we had shot, like to have summaries. So we had volunteers finding that. And so there was so many pieces. And then we were also figuring out that distribution part, which was completely like, how are we going to get people to actually see this film, which involves a huge network process of connecting with different organizations across the state of Iowa. And every step of that, it was really amazing how genuine people were in wanting to be a part of the process, and that they recognize that this is something that's really needed. So in that way, it was really like a just us moment. Like, okay, we're all in this network together. We're gonna create changes that are needed.
Yeah, well, and the green light grant really, so, shout out to them. I really feel like the film would not have been as good as it is if it wasn't for the green light grant. In Iowa, and they took a chance on us in the National Endowment for the Arts and the Humanities and the Iowa branch of that. Like they believed in us, but and a lot
That's
of
so
the
true.
footage that we.
Can I add on that said about the green light? That sort of speaks to our process too, is that it partly because it was the COVID era, but also because of the unique nature, I think, of our project. They changed one of their rules that year where they waived their capital matching, like that we didn't need to match the funds of the grant, but could match it with pro bono, which exactly fits our project because we had all of the effort and energy.
It was all, yeah.
But it started, I also want to give credit to Carleton, Carleton College, where Maya was attending, because they were the first one to believe in the project, and they allowed us to use their equipment. That Maya and some of the other filmmakers, early filmmakers, and they were able to check out film from the university or from the college, and I think they gave us like $400 or something like that. But they allowed us to use the equipment, which
That's true.
allowed us to start film. What'd you say?
Yeah,
Hello?
I was just saying that's true. I forget about that tiny, they had some name for it, the tiny grant or something like that, that they gave us, that $400 that really helped us get started.
Yeah, it made a big difference. And also, before the green light grant, Maya set up a GoFundMe page, and there were so many people, her relatives, a few of my people who knew me, but a lot of it came from people who knew Maya. And of course, I had a network, and I had people too that donated. But that really kept us, filming and finance some of the trips before Greenlight. And had we not had that, we wouldn't have been able to submit footage to Greenlight. Like, we made a trailer before and submitted that, with our application to let them know that we were serious and that we were capable of producing the type of film that we talked about in our application. So all of that made a difference. It wasn't just, Maya and I who, thought of this, great film and executed. There were just so many people along the way, even people who allowed us to come into their homes and film them who didn't make the final cut. Because of the pandemic, we had to pivot and change the direction of the film a little bit. And then you had the George Floyd protests, you had the lockdowns, so you had so much going on at the time that, it really pushed us, to making the film, as good as it is now, in my opinion.
And if I'm correct, you show that and have shown that in a number of different nonprofits and churches and a variety of different venues where you show it for free. And when Maya can, she goes, or otherwise she zooms in. And then there have been some other people who are in the documentary who have gone also to speak about the documentary, because the purpose of it is to get the information out to the public and to raise awareness about prison and about reentry and about people who actually got a second chance and are doing very well. So that's the whole purpose. Go ahead, Ced.
And to provide evidence to what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about juveniles and people who were 18, both of the stars of the film, Dante McKenzie, who took a plea bargain for second-degree murder and attempted murder and was serving a 75-year sentence before he was paroled. He was 18 at the time of his crime, and Charles Bruton Jr., he was convicted. He took a plea bargain for, I think, second-degree robbery and maybe burglary, and he was 18 at the time of his film, and you'll see that. So these were young people, and when you can see, the men that they become, they're married, they're, homeowners, when you can see that, who we are at 18, and a lot of older people can attest to this. Most of us are not who we were as teenagers.
Thank heaven.
We're not even the same people who we were in our 20s.
That's
so
right.
Why don't
and
we
thank
apply
goodness.
this to the law? Yes, exactly. So people can go back, especially older people, and this brain science is this neuroscience is amazing. And a lot of work and effort have gone into this. And personally, around the age of 25 is when I really started to change. If you look at my disciplinary report history, and I was never a bad prisoner or a troublemaker, or even a troublemaker outside of prison. I got into trouble, but I wasn't a troublemaker. But I had 16 major reports before the age of 25, and I had one since.
Yeah.
So that's very telling. And the one that I had was for like a property rule violation.
Yes. And that's a really, really good point. Yeah, that's a very good point, that people are not who they were. And we should not be held accountable. Well, we need to be held accountable for all of our behavior, but we should not be punished for what we did, for the worst thing that we've ever done, forever, for the rest of our lives. Nobody should. I mean, everybody is worse than the best thing they've done and better than the worst thing they've done, according to Life. And that was said by Mr. Stevenson, the attorney out of Georgia. So, yeah.
Brian Stevenson.
Brian Stevenson, yes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay. And you only have a few minutes left, Ced, before you're going to have to go into your cell. So do you want to talk for a minute about the book that you're doing now? And then after you're off the phone, I'll go back to letting Maya talk some more about that book and about Just Us.
All right. The book is called The Quan's Regret. And the inspiration for the book were the kids where Maya worked. And I don't know, can I say the name of the facility?
Yeah,
Probably
sure.
not. No. Oh, can he?
All right.
Yeah, I
Probably
think so.
not. You think? She says
Well,
yes.
it's not.
I'm not
It's
sure.
not. It's not based off any individual kid. There's no.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's
Okay.
not. It's not based off an individual kid.
Okay.
But Maya was working at UCAN in Chicago, which is a residential treatment facility, if I'm not mistaken, for kids who have mental health issues, or who are not able to be placed at home. A lot of them have been into hospitals or in type of environments for treatment, and they're not ready for home yet, or there's not a place for them to go to yet. And a lot of these kids were struggling with, regret and guilt, especially some of her boys, and she can speak more to this. And she was like, yeah, I wish there were, more books that these kids could identify with. And I've always wanted to help, kids in that position. And, I really have a soft spot for these kids, because I really believe that society is overlooking them and doing them a disservice by not giving them more resources when they go through. And a lot of them have been through traumatic childhoods. Mm-hmm. And we expect them to be so resilient to just, get over it. Or we can, as a society, give them the minimal, or give them the basic level of care and expect them to change their behavior. So I felt like I could contribute to that by writing a manuscript to help these kids, or help some kids understand, or kind of help them process regrets and some of the harm that they may have caused to their, to their family members, mm-hmm. to their close family. And so I wrote a story about a boy who engaged in what you would typically call domestic violence against his mom. Destroyed some of her property and pushed her, and he ends up in a treatment facility. And he's full of regrets, but he doesn't know how to process those regrets. So through a mentor at the facility, he learns how to write an apology letter. And, that kind of changes his views, and he's able to let go of his regret. And he writes a beautiful apology letter to his mother, and they go to therapy, and she accepts him back home.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yes, and I just wanted to add that book is not a for-profit book. My goal is to, and we're working on starting a nonprofit to distribute books to incarcerated youth. And by incarcerated youth, we don't mean youth who are just accused of or convicted of committing a crime, but those who are unable to live at home, that aren't in a residential home, like a foster home or a family member's home, who are living in facilities. So we want to provide books to them at no cost to them, that they can identify with, that can help them, process, the journey that they're on, or what they're going through.
Yes. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And just as a little piece of information, as a retired therapist, and I worked with juveniles for quite a long time, and juveniles in trouble, you might consider writing another book after this about how someone who does not have that kind of a wonderful experience with his mother can get beyond the guilt and the whatever got him in trouble, and live a productive life, even if he does not get that reconciliation or she does not get that reconciliation. Because there are a lot of kids who need to hear that you do not have to be a victim of your past and you do not have to be a victim of your own pain.
Yes, and we're hoping that the nonprofit, will not just be, a way for me to get my books out into the hands. Like I'm just starting off with my book, with Daquan's Regret. But hopefully we're able to get enough funding to where we can receive other books by other authors and provide these books to the kids. So I agree with you there, and it may be me, but we would like to inspire other people and other, diverse people from diverse. I know that's a cuss word now among some people, diversity, but that's a bad thing. But I would love to get, a diverse amount of books that these kids may be able to identify with from diverse authors, because my experience is insufficient to really cover
to reach everybody.
The demographic of those kids. Exactly.
Yeah, to reach everybody.
Like I don't know what it's like to be, a part of the LGBT community, Q plus. I don't know what it's like to be a female, a female of color. I don't know these things. So I'm hoping that we'll inspire authors who can identify, with, these specific kids, and we can, distribute some of their books too.
Excellent. That's an excellent idea. Well, I want to thank you before we get cut off, because I hate that. I don't like, I've come to not like that woman who says you only have a minute left. I don't like her. I just don't like her.
So. Yeah, I've heard that before too. I tell people she's just doing her job. It's just recorded anyway.
I know, but it's just rude. So anyway, thank you very, very much, Ced, for giving your time and for all that you've done, and for for being the man that you are, for turning your life around and then being willing to help others. Thank you very, very much.
Yes, you're welcome. Well, thank you. And for those of you who don't know, Sue is actually in Just Us. She was so gracious enough to come out during COVID, with some other special women and talk about legislation, and they were a great part of Just Us and a very needed and an essential part of Just Us. So I would like to thank you for being a part of that, and Stormy, and I can't. And Betty Andrews, the president of the Iowa Nebraska NAACP, and Ko Abdul Samad, the legislature, he's in the film. So we have some very important people and some people who've been on the ground, fighting for civil rights, the modern day civil rights workers. And I was very honored to have all of you, be in the film and to trust me, somebody who was sitting in a prison cell, to represent you in the right way. We didn't really have a lot of stipulations and, a lot of fear as far as what was my agenda. Like, I really appreciate that trust that all of you, gave us. And I hope we, did you some justice.
Well, and we were very privileged to do it. Very privileged. I can speak for the team that I was on. We were very happy to be able to do that and get the word out, because that's what it takes. I mean, we need people and it needs to be grassroots. It just needs to be grassroots. So.
And on that note, Sue, I think.
Go ahead, Maya.
Well, just what our hope is right now is we want to be able to use our film, our book, and just the projects that we've been part of and the connections we've built over those years of those projects to be able to get the word out about action that people can take in this moment. So I kind of hope we can talk a little bit at the end of our call now about that and about the bill that you mentioned earlier.
Yes. So.
And at the end of Just Us, really quick before I go, I use a quote of Dr. Martin Luther King, Betty Andrews does, about the arc of the justice being long. And, we need that now more than ever.
Yeah, we do right now.
You know, I'm not speaking for one party or another, but as human beings and as Americans, we really need to come together and do what's right, you know, and not operate out of fear and hate and disdain. We need to come together and operate out of love, you know. And for those of people who are religious, we need to go into our doctrines, into our text, and seek out these verses of love and community and caring, and we need to live by them, you know, and we need to push our leaders to follow them.
Mm-hmm. And with that, he got disconnected from our wonderful friend who says, "You have a minute left."
But I'm glad he didn't get cut off.
Yes, yes. Yeah, he
yeah.
got his last word in before
Yeah.
he got hung up on. So what would you want would you rather talk about? Do you have any more to say about Just
Well,
Us?
I kind of want to ask you right now, if that's okay.
Sure.
So what can
Oh, you're cutting out.
oh,
I'm losing you.
cut it out. Oh,
You frozen.
oh,
Yeah, there's nothing. There's nothing. So if you want to sign back in, we'll see if we can get you. Otherwise, I'm going to just talk for a minute about this particular project. Are you back? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. Okay.
Okay, great. So that's what I wanted you to do anyway, was talk about what people can do when it comes to this bill, the raise the age bill.
Okay. Well, the any bill, what you can do, any bill that you want to support. The first thing to do is to go to legislative Iowa, legis.iowa.gov, and you can find any bill that there is that you want to read about on that site. This particular bill is House File 126, and you can also just Google House File 126 Iowa and look at the there are a number of bills that are numbered that, but you will find the one that is actually about changing the age. And it was filed about a week ago. So it's the newest bill that has been filed in the House at this particular point. After you decide that you really believe in a bill, then the thing to do is to find out who your legislators are, who the legislators are that actually authored the bill, and that is written on the bill, and contact them and say that you really support this bill, that you really would like to see it passed, and any other legislator that you might know or that you might know of, and let them know that you are in favor of this bill. And you can either email them or actually handwrite them a letter. It's better to email them because they just don't have time to read letters. So it's better to email. And hopefully, and ask them for an answer. And most of the time, legislators are really good about answering. So that's one of the most important things that you can do, is let them know as a constituent you would like to see this bill passed. Another thing that you can do is get in touch with whatever advocacy group there is in your area that you know of. Like, for example, this particular channel is a combination between Iowa Justice Action Network, Iowa Cure, and Living Beyond the Bars of Iowa. Those three organizations that I'm a part of all are doing what we can to try to get legislation passed that will help improve prison conditions and will help make lives better for people who are out of prison. We also really believe in second chances, and our main focus has been to end mass incarceration and to end life without the possibility of parole. So once again, Iowa Justice Action Network, Iowa Cure, and Living Beyond the Bars of Iowa. Those three organizations are all here in Iowa, are all statewide, and all have interest in trying to do what we can for legislation and for making conditions better. Churches oftentimes will want to get involved in helping and supporting different causes. There's also a group in Coralville, Iowa, that's a prison ministry group that's with the UU Church of Coralville, Universalists United of Coralville, Iowa, and they are very good about getting the word out and very good about wanting to do what they can to facilitate positive change. So I would suggest that you contact your legislators, that you contact the legislators who are sponsoring the bill and let them know that you're in favor of that you contact either through your church or through one of the organizations that I have mentioned or through any other organization that you might know of, and see what you can do, what they're doing, and see what you can do to not only get the word out to other people, but also to make your voice heard by legislators. The more people, the better, because that's who's doing this, is the legislators. I mean,
Yeah.
we can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, but who we need is the legislators to hear what we're saying and to do something. That's what we need. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but that's my
It does.
take
Yep.
on it.
And that's what I'll be turning my attention to now as well. I mean, part of what I'll be doing is working with Ced on the illustrations for the book. But the other part of what I want to be focusing on right now is reaching out to all those connections throughout the years and telling them about this bill and getting that word out and
Mhm.
just organizing. It seems like this is the time right now. So,
Yes, and that's what's really needed.
yep.
So, is there anything else that you wanted to say for this evening that you can think
No,
of?
just that if for any viewers that I would invite dialogue and further relationships, if people want to talk and discuss possible screenings or discuss other ways that we could work together. Me and I can speak for Ced too, because we do so much work together. We're usually down. So reach out to us and we'll figure out ways that we can work together.
And how would they get a hold of you? How would somebody get a hold of you?
They can email me. So you can email me through maya.shelley. That's maya.shelllie @gmail.com. Or they can find us on Instagram. We have Just Us Documentary on Instagram. Or they can go on our website, Just Us Documentary. Actually, don't go on the website. It needs some work. But
Never mind
yeah,
the
I
website.
think email or Instagram is just fine. So yeah.
Okay. They can also contact me, and I will get the
Right.
message to you.
Right.
And
Comment on the YouTube video or whatever as well. Yeah.
right. Yeah, we're everywhere.
Yeah.
I really invite you, the public, to comment on this particular session, as well as all sessions that I have done on this particular channel. And if you want to get in touch with me, the email, it's actually a Gmail address, is iowaprisonperspectives@gmail.com. That's iaprisonperspectives@gmail.com. And what I'm most interested in is what your thoughts are. If you agree with what we're doing, if you disagree with what we're doing, if you want to get involved, whatever you would like to say to me, I would like to hear. So before we go, I just want to thank Ced again, even though he can't hear me. I'm sure Maya will let him know. But thank you again, Ced, for participating and for all that you have done from inside the walls. And thank you very much, Maya, for all that you have done and will continue to do. And I wish you the best. And anything that I can do to be of help with what you're doing, and just as I believe anything that you can do to help with passage of these bills and that sort of thing will be
Yeah.
much welcomed. So,
We'll be in touch.
and for
Yeah.
those of you who are viewing, thank you very much for listening. And please let me know what your thoughts are and what your feelings are. And once again, it's Sue Hutchins, and I am at iowaprisonperspectives@gmail.com. That's iaprisonperspectives@gmail.com. So with that, I will say good night and have good days. Take care. Good night.
too. Bye.